I've got compression, and I've got it so that it engages when I start yelling. And if I turn this down, you can see this threshold's coming. It's going to start turning it down, and it's providing kind of a ceiling. So everything above the threshold is going to be a ratio. It has to be like, well, this says 2.5 times louder for every one increment. It actually amplifies louder. Handy dandy tool.
Yeah.
Trust me. You're going to love that one.
Wait a second. Shut up.
You know, we noticed Toby isn't as dramatic as he is.
Feeling packaged.
Handled. Yes, handled.
So compression's used a lot in the recording industry. It used to be when CDs first came out in the 80s, there was a lot of dynamic range, and you bought all these CDs, and it was really quiet and really loud. It was great. Now everything's compressed, so everything's the same volume, and it sounds really loud. So if you look at a waveform of a recording from the late 80s, it looks nice and dynamic. And if you look at a recording of a current pop star, it's just going to look like a solid thing, and that's just so it sounds loud.
Yeah. Well,
I
you're
think
in
it's
All the
a
time.
travesty, but that's just the way of the recording industry.
Yeah.
So that's compression. There's lots of details on compression, I believe, in the videos with Yamaha.
Yeah.
So I won't get into it too much. Ratio is a little handy thing too. So if you have, like, what we'll do is probably on the piano tomorrow when you guys are playing during the service, I'll start tweaking this stuff. But we'll put some compression on the piano too, because that's kind of a hard thing to amplify. Pianos, just by the very nature of the sound, when you hit a note, is very loud, and then the sustain's kind of quiet, and then it rolls off. So what you want to do is kind of cap those peaks, and it will actually sound more natural that way, because your ears naturally adjust for it if it's acoustic.
Yeah.
So we'll try to emulate that through the sound system so we don't blow people away. The piano will probably sound a little too percussive until we get that set up.
Do you want to pause and do a new one?
I did. Okay.
That's compression. Any compression questions? Another thing that shows up, since we have it turned on, there's a little C right here on the channel marker, so you can see what's happening. And if I talk loud, once I get past that threshold, the C gets solid. So talk, 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 loud, quiet, quiet, quiet. So if that's flashing, you know that it's kind of just hitting the compression.
Okay.
So where am I at? Name and color. Okay. You can see we've got names on the channel strip. We really like this. No more board tape, no more markers, no more stickers. What we can do is if I hit this name field right here, and then I'm going to hit it again. This is kind of, and to do that, you get kind of the channel summary. Kind of shows you what jack on the back it is, where the preamp is, where the EQ set at, if the gate's turned on, the compression set at. I'm going to hit this again. That brings me into the naming area. And we have right now just the name handheld. If you wanted to change the name, you can just tap in there, tap again, and you get a keyboard. You can change it. If you don't like orange, you can change the color and make it purple. So, and then if you want to change the icon's just on this screen. It actually shows up on other stuff too if you hook up an iPad. We'll get to that later. You can change it to look like a drum set if you want it to. But I'll make it back to wireless. While I'm on the screen, there's a couple other things. There's this thing called recall safe. That makes it so that channel is safe from being overwritten when you recall the scene. So you might set that for the pastor mics, so that if you've got a scene change, maybe it's you're doing some long Christmas lessons and carols thing, and they're changing stuff around up there, but the pastors are talking, and you're changing scenes. So if you had like scenes set up for a sequential kind of service, you'd make the spoken mic to be recall safe, so when you're recalling the scene, it doesn't change the level and the name and all that stuff. Another one is this thing called mute safe. There is this global mute. So if you the sound system goes streaming into feedback, you have a panic button right here. Mute input. That'll mute all the inputs. Unless the inputs have mute safe turned on. Because they're safe from the mute. So that's what that means.
Ixnay on the
Yeah.
mute.
There's that. There's an effects mute too, so we'll get into effects in a little bit. Any questions kind of about how the channel works?
Kind of a random thing that popped into my head. This fader right here is for the stereo channels, or is
This
this
one?
or is this a master fader?
That's the master fader.
Okay.
Stereo faders are up here.
Okay. Perfect.
And they appear other places too. Like on page 2. Stereo input.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. Page 2.
Page 2. Okay. So now we talked about the piano having its own monitor. We have the choir that kind of has their own mix. You're running off of the auxes. I don't know if you did monitor mixes with your old mixer, but there is an aux send on a mixer. And what that is just a unique mix for that output. So what we can do on this mixer is what they call sends on fader. So instead of having a little individual knob for each channel that will adjust the volume in that aux, we hit the aux 1 button. Things start blinking, and you can see it here. It says send to piano. So now when we move the faders, we're actually pushing the volume up into that speaker above the piano. So this is we're actually working on the piano mix. So that's how that works. We have the piano mixes on aux 1. It says piano. Aux 2 is the choir. Aux 3 is we have dist, because I can't fit the word distribution in there, but that's all the speakers in the hallways and classrooms.
Oh.
You could also call it 70 volt, but that's kind of what I would call it as a technician, but it's the distributed stuff. And then aux 4 is the Williams mix. That doesn't mean it's going to Joe's house. It means it's going to the hearing assistance system. So the people who pick up
The
those
hearing
little
impaired
receivers,
stuff.
and they get their own mix.
Yeah.
And really that's for, you want to kind of mix them heavy with vocal and less with instrument.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that's set up. So if you look, I've already kind of created a mix for that, where you've got the vocal stuff turned up. These are, the instruments would be turned down a little bit.
Why is one blinking and the over here and the other ones aren't? Because is that the
That's the one that we're working
working
on.
on?
Channel
Got
right
it.
there.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. And then when I hit this again, it goes back to the main mix. We have one other send, and that's to the recording device down here. We picked a stereo pair called aux 9 and 10. Send to record, and that records straight down here. The levels are matched, so when you're in, if you're, say you're not doing anything in the house, and you're maybe just doing a choir rehearsal and recording the choir, you could leave this like this and mix the choir for the recording. Probably a good idea to be listening to it with headphones, so you know what's going on. But the level, meter level here, will match what's going on to the recording down there. So you don't need to be setting the level
Good.
like this.
I
You
was
can just
wondering
look up
about
here.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't have anything going to the recording yet. So just something we'll have to decide later. You can decide. Things stop blinking, things go away, you know you're back to a normal mix.
Yeah. Right now we're recording our sermons,
Okay.
so we want to be able to have whoever's doing the sermon be recorded, and that's pretty much it at this point.
Now we talked about the aux mixes. If you want to see at a glance when we're on the channel, there's this little section right here that kind of shows you what the levels are for that channel going to those auxes. The other way is just to hit this again, and you can see that nothing, it's not going to anything. If I look, it's going all the way to aux 3 is where we finally get number 3 some audio in there. Now, if you watch that top orange one, as I turn it down, it goes down, goes back up. This kind of shows you where it is.